Hi, this is Michael Buckoff from BetterTOEFLScores.com, and today I have the privilege of talking to a student. Her name is Maika, and she has a 106 out of 120 TOEFL IBT score. Let me share with my audience a minute what her scores are in each section of the test. First of all, on the reading, she had 30 points out of 30. On the listening, she has 29 points out of 30. And the speaking, this is her test section, she had 23 points out of 30. And on the writing, she had 24 points out of 30. Now, I met Maika here at Cal State University, San Bernardino, and she's a student who's studying in our pre-grad program, and she's getting a master's degree here in the near-distant future in social work. Maika, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, that's great. Now, my questions are going to center around your TOEFL score, which is above 100, which puts you at a very small percentage of those students who actually take the test. Not many actually score higher than 100. So I'm going to look at the TOEFL in 7 different areas, beginning with vocabulary, and then pronunciation, grammar, reading, listening, speaking, and finally writing. So I want to look at 7 different things. And I'll be asking you some questions about each area, and maybe some of the people that watch the video, other TOEFLers, when I say TOEFL, TOEFL students, but other TOEFLers maybe can listen to you, they can hear your story, and maybe they can get some great ideas on how to effectively prepare for a very difficult examination. So first, let's start with vocabulary.
Okay,
vocabulary is kind of like the cornerstone or the foundation of one's English skills. Now, if you have good vocabulary, you can do well on all 4 sections of the test. For example, you can read. You can understand what you read. Your listening comprehension is probably going to be better because a lot of the listening comprehension has academic vocabulary. And even on the speaking section, you can use the right word to express an idea in the situation. And finally, obviously, good vocabulary is important to writing. So my question is what did you do beforehand over maybe a few months or even a few years? What did you do in terms of vocabulary study to help prepare yourself for the TOEFL test? And do you have any advice for other students who are getting ready for the TOEFL and what they can do to prepare in terms of their own vocabulary skills?
for me it goes back further than just a couple months preparing for the TOEFL test, because I am from the Netherlands, which is a European country. English is a second language over there, and we start English around the age of 10 when you go to junior high, and so it's actually like a daily routine, the English classes in high school. And so, well, that helped me a lot with my vocabulary. And also we have like a lot of English shows on television, so we just use English a lot. And well, once I was studying for my TOEFL score, or for my TOEFL test, I realized that a lot of Dutch and English words have the same origin. That, of course, was really helpful for doing the TOEFL score, doing the TOEFL test. And well, about practicing for TOEFL test, well, actually, I started, I think, a couple weeks before. I registered on, I think it was ats.com. It's just I don't know, I think it's just a general TOEFL site. I bought the practice test online. I did, and well, I tried that. So I did, like, I practiced all the different items, like the pronunciation, the grammar. So I practiced that, and after that I got my score, and I realized that actually my writing part was really bad. It was really, that was my lowest score. Well, my vocabulary was pretty decent, because I do have I think my vocabulary is pretty good, which helps me in reading the text and just like doing all the different items.
All right, sounds good. And your story is similar to a lot of students who have really high TOEFL scores. Is you're saying that you actually used English for a pretty long time, going all the way back to 10 years old when you're in the Netherlands and Europe. So also I agree with you on the point where you said that you have Dutch, European-based language, and there's a lot of what's called cognates. There's words that are similar in your own language, and they can be similar to the words in the new language, and that helps. So some languages like Chinese or Japanese, it's going to be a little bit harder because they don't have that advantage. But just using the language like you did is definitely, it really does help a person get high English skills, and using it from an early age up into the point that you TOEFL. Okay, let's go to number 2, pronunciation. Now, you guys, if you're watching this video and you see Maika here, I mean, obviously she has good pronunciation. She speaks clearly. She pauses at the right times when she's speaking. Her vowels and consonant sounds are good. Her syllable division, her word stress, sentence rhythm, pausing, intonation, it's all very clear. So I think this is my next question is, with pronunciation, what did you do? How did you improve? How did you get to the level of speaking that you have in terms of your clear speech? How did you get your pronunciation so clear? And what advice would you give for TOEFLers who are preparing for the TOEFL? How can they improve their pronunciation?
Well, again, it goes back to high school where we used to learn our vocabulary and the pronunciation. And what I did, especially like in preparing for my TOEFL test, is watch a lot of English shows and try to because all the English shows have subtitles, and I just try not to look at the subtitling and just listen to what they were saying. So I watched a lot of like CNN, the news, and just regular shows, just like the soap operas and stuff too. So
I had a quick question now. Why did you choose CNN and those kinds of programs for your?
I chose CNN because it's available on regular Dutch television. So it wasn't a really conscious choice. Okay. It was just what was available. So my advice to people who have problems with the pronunciation would be just watch those shows, listen what they're saying, try to understand it. If you don't know it, write down the words you don't understand, look it up online or in a dictionary, because most dictionaries also have like the phonetic pronunciation written in there. So that really helped me to prepare.
Yeah, I brought up that question about the watching CNN and those kinds of shows, and I know you didn't make a deliberate choice, but watching CNN is a good way not only to work on pronunciation using closed caption, but it's just a good thing to watch because a lot of the vocabulary will be almost college level, and you get exposure to more difficult vocabulary and how to pronounce that vocabulary, and it's important there. And using dictionaries and things. Now, what she's saying here, let me just recap what Maika is talking about. As she watches a TV show, she uses closed caption. And as you see the subtitles below, you can actually practice a device called tracking. You actually begin, tracking simply means that you read along with the speakers. And some people will do this. They will try to imitate the speakers on the show. And it's a way of improving one's accent. So very good ideas. Okay, let's move over to grammar now. Grammar. The good news is there's no grammar section on the TOEFL IBT. The bad news is your grammar is going to be evaluated on the speaking and the writing section. So I don't want anybody who's watching this video to think for a minute that grammar is not important. But what's not important to the TOEFL IBT is the skill and drill grammar. You don't have to read a sentence and then choose A, B, C, or D and choose which answer best completes the sentence. You don't have to identify any grammar errors in a sentence, nothing like that. But you need to use advanced grammar when you're speaking. You can't speak using simple English. That's a very bad strategy for TOEFL. You have to combine sentences, and you have to do this in both the speaking and the writing areas. And that brings me to my next question. So looking at grammar, and grammar allows you to speak and allows you to write. So my question kind of follows my other kinds of questions. First of all, what things did you do to improve your own grammar skills of English? And what advice would you have for other students who are preparing for the TOEFL? What can they do to improve their grammar skills so that they can get higher scores, especially on the speaking and writing sections?
I did a lot of grammar in high school in my English classes, but I do have to say I'm personally not really a rule type of girl. I try to like listen to a sentence, and I don't know. When I use grammar, it's more like a feeling. Of course, there are rules, but they aren't like really conscious. I'm not like really using the rules. What I did to prepare for my TOEFL was actually buying like a basic grammar book from Dutch to English, and I read that just to refresh my memory because it had been like 4 years, or well, actually longer, like five or 6 years since my last English classes. So I used that to prepare, and I think that was really helpful just to refresh my memory.
Yeah, and you're describing part of correct grammar and not correct grammar. You're like a native speaker, really. So a native speaker doesn't get caught up in all the rules. You said you go by what's called a feeling. And I think what she's talking about here is you have what's called it's called an intuitive approach to using grammar, which means you kind of speak what sounds right, or you write what sounds right to you. You don't necessarily have memorized a whole bunch of rules, but because you've been using the language for so long, you have a good understanding of what sounds right or what sounds wrong. So if I said, for example, I ain't never done nothing, I ain't never done, that's a triple negative, or that probably doesn't sound right to you, right? You like, or he don't want to go, instead of he doesn't want to go, right? So I think part of what she's saying is important there is using the language over a long period of time. It makes it easier for you to understand grammar. Now, she also said that she studied grammar in high school, and she also, right before Maika took the TOEFL, she used kind of a translation type Dutch-English type grammar dictionary or whatever. So you just wanted to refresh your memory a little bit. Now, I want to talk directly to the audience here. Now, when you're studying grammar, you need to know what to study, because there's hundreds or thousands of books out there. But to do well on the TOEFL, you want to pay attention to what's called complex sentence structures. You need to understand how to combine simple sentences to make longer sentences. So that would be important. It's called sentence structure. So if you have your own grammar dictionary, it might be Chinese English or Korean English or Spanish English, whatever. Make sure that you focus on sentence structure. It's important to understand how to use verb tenses. Make sure when you need to use present versus past tense. So you could look in your grammar book and review your verb tenses. You can review basic sentence structure or basic sentence types. And it's important to learn to use certain kinds of connectors. For example, which, maybe that, maybe who, maybe because, maybe if, maybe even though. These are important connectors that allow you to express relationships of ideas. These things are important for you, especially as you begin doing what's called speaking and writing tasks for TOEFL. Okay, let's move on. Let's dive right into our next area here. Let's talk about reading. God forbid you got to read these passages. You could have the long form of the TOEFL could be 90 minutes of reading. The short form is 60 minutes. I mean, you could have 37 to like 60 questions. So it's difficult. Now here's the problem, Mike. I'm going to be honest with you. Here's the problem that students face. Now, you got 30 out of 30. You didn't have this problem, but the problem is when students are reading, they're reading too slowly and they have difficulty concentrating. So I think the speed at which you read and being able to concentrate on what you read are important. So for you, in terms of improving your reading skills, how did you develop an ability to read faster? How did you develop an ability to concentrate better? And what kind of advice would you give other students who are getting ready for the test? How can they read faster and have better concentration? Because if they can read faster and if they have better concentration, they will do better on the reading section.
I really had a trouble with my concentration during the reading part. I was kind of surprised that I had to do like 5 or 6 texts. I had to read 5 or 6 texts. So what I did is I actually I tried it during the test. What I did was I started reading and I kept track of the time. So when I saw that I was short on time, I kind of changed my strategy. What I try to do is I didn't read the whole text. So what I did, I went straight to the questions and I traced back the questions in the text. So I think I only read the paragraphs which were important to answer the question. So I did that every time, and in the end they asked questions about the general meaning of the text. And what I did was, because I just read like the short pieces of text every time, what I did was, because I saved time with this strategy, I had time to go over the text one more time. So that excuse me, that is what I did regarding to the reading part. The concentration was also really difficult, so whenever I had time left, I didn't click to the next text. I always let the timer just finish out entirely. So maybe I was just sitting there and doing nothing for 5 minutes. I was sitting right next to. Yeah.
You were taking a break.
Yeah, I was just watching out the window, doing nothing. Let
me get this right. So each passage, you have approximately 20 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have 20 minutes to read the passage, but what you're saying is you finish the passage maybe in 15 minutes, but instead of going to the next passage right away, you took a break.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's exactly what I did. So if it comes to the reading, that was my strategy. Preparing for the reading part, I did read some English books. So that's just to get familiar with it.
What kind of books did you read?
I'm embarrassed to say that I read the Harry Potter books.
Why are you embarrassed about that? A lot of people read Harry Potter.
I don't know. It's kind of a childish book, I guess. So yeah, I read the Harry Potter book, and I bought some. Just some regular books, I guess. Not too difficult on language. It weren't really difficult books. Just entertaining books that I really enjoyed reading. So
what would you tell other students getting ready for the TOEFL in terms of reading? What advice would you give them? If you talk directly to them right now, what would you say?
Practice, do the practice test on the internet. You really need to do those. So just so you know, what you can expect, that's really important. And read English books. Just read them.
All right. Thanks for your wonderful words of wisdom there, Maika, with the reading. I like that strategy. And I think that you're saying that when you took the reading, you had the long form. I think you had maybe 90 minutes. You had a 90-minute test for the reading. So she had a pretty good strategy, or maybe it was 80 minutes, 20, 40, 60, 80, so 80 probably. So she has a 20-minute passage, and you guys might want to pay attention here. We're talking about the first of 4 sections here, and remember that the speaking section is section 3, and if you don't relax during the reading and the listening, you're really going to get killed on the speaking. So I like her strategy. If you finish one of the reading passages in 15 minutes, and you still have 5 free minutes there, why not kick back? If you feel confident, take a short break. Relax your brain a little bit, and then after the timer runs out, you can go to the next passage. And that's a good strategy because you're saving energy. You're saving mental energy for the more difficult parts of the test, because once students or TOEFLers get to the 3rd and 4th section, speaking and writing, if they haven't relaxed on the reading and the listening parts, they're going to get tired. And of course, if you're really tired, your score is going to go down. Okay, she had some good advice there. Let's move on to listening. Here we go, folks. Pay attention here. Listening is very important on the TOEFL. You have a listening section. It might be 60 minutes. It might be 80 minutes long, but you have a listening section. Now, you also have listening on the speaking, and you have a lecture on the writing section. So the same thing for the reading. You have reading on the speaking, writing, and also a reading section. So reading and listening, they integrate these skills on the TOEFL. You must be a good reader, and you have to be a good listener. You have to be able to listen, and even you got to write down in note form, especially the information during the speaking and the writing sections, because you have to use that information to help you answer the speaking and writing tasks. So I'm looking at your score. You got 29 out of 30. That's pretty good. That's a good score. I mean, your reading was perfect, 30 out of 30. Your listening is 29 out of 30. So here's my question. So in terms of preparing for the TOEFL test, what advice do you have? And then during the TOEFL test, as students do the listening section or they do listening on the speaking and writing, what advice would you give them during the test and as they prepare for the test?
Preparing for the test, like I said before, I listen to English shows, I watch the English news, just try to okay, what are they saying? Trying to summarize it for myself, try to see if I really could get the main point they were saying. I also did the preparation test at home, so I knew what I could expect.
Now, I had a quick question. Tell me about the preparation test. Where did you access these? Was this at www.toefl.org?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So I just I bought the practice test online. I do have to say that I didn't do like the whole all the different sections. I didn't do them all at once. I just took the reading section one night. I took the listening section the other night. So that's how I prepared for the test. As far as the listening goes, well, I think because of my background, I have a pretty good listening skill and a reading skill. My vocabulary is pretty good.
Not a question here. So you talked about studying English in school, beginning when you were about age 10. Now, what about your environment, your home environment? Did you guys use English at all when you were at home, or was it strictly Dutch?
No, that was strictly Dutch. But the thing is, we have in the Dutch language, you do have English words. I mean, we use the word update, for example. It's the same word with the same meaning. I mean, we have a bunch of other words that we use. So I come across English a lot, and so that really improved my skill. As far as people who don't have that extra advantage, I think it is really good just to practice before you're going to do the test. During the listening test, try to concentrate, and that's why it's so important to relax at the reading part. Take your rest there, because so you save your concentration for the listening part. And another thing, what you said, Michael, is take notes. Really important. That's actually, I think that's all you can do, actually.
Yeah, the note-taking, I've actually written a few blog posts on note-taking, and essentially you have two kinds of students. Some students, they may listen to a lecture, or they watch a TV show, and they just sit there, they listen to it, but that's it. This is called a passive learner. Now, an active learner actually works on note-taking. Now, for TOEFL, you want to focus on two types of notes. First, obviously, the main idea. What's the main point of the lecture? Second of all, what are the most important supporting points that connect to that main idea? So you have to get used to separating the main idea from the most important supporting ideas, and try not to pay that much attention to some of the smaller, unimportant details. Now, this suggestion is especially important for speaking. Because if you're speaking for 60 seconds and you're speaking about something that you've read or something that you listened to, you got to be good at selecting. Because you cannot talk about everything you read. You can't talk about everything you listen to. You need to carefully distinguish between the most important ideas and the least important ideas. So I think what you're talking about, watching TV shows and things, even working on note-taking and distinguishing between the most important and the least important ideas, this can be a very useful skill, especially when you get to the speaking, even the writing sections of the test. But congratulations again, Maika, on that really strong score of listening. Now let's go to speaking. A lot of you guys are waiting for this, I know. Speaking is really in demand on the internet. A lot of people are trying to do score high on the speaking. Unfortunately, this is your weakest section. So in this one, I can ask you some questions maybe with speaking. For those who don't know, on the TOEFL you have a 20-minute section. You have 6 speaking tasks. The first 2 speaking tasks are called personal experience. They're para-choice and open choice type questions. The TOEFL may say, what do you like better? Would you rather bike or swim? Give reasons for your choice. That's called a para-choice. An open choice might say, describe your most favorite vacation when you were a child. Why was it so important to you? And then you have to think about some ideas, and in about 15 seconds, then you have to speak for 45 seconds after that. So you have a very short preparation time, and then you have to speak for 45 seconds. Now, once you get to the speaking tasks 3, 4, 5, and 6, you get into what's called integrated speaking tasks. For some, this is the real nightmare. You have to read, you have to listen, and you have to figure out how to organize this information. This is the hardest part. You have to know how to organize the ideas, or you will not score above 26. You must know how to separate and summarize the 2 sources, and then figure out a way to present it in an organized manner. So generally, I'm going to ask you first about the speaking. What happened? Why was it so hard? And then what suggestions would you give other students that might help them not make the same mistakes that you made during this section? So I think there's a lot of people that can probably get some good ideas from this.
What happened? I panicked during the speaking section. I was stressed out because you have only 15 seconds to come up with an answer. And it's also a personal thing. I'm a talker. Maybe I need a little more time to get to my point. And that time you don't have that time during the speaking section. So you have 15 seconds to come up with an answer, and then you have 45 or 60 seconds to talk about your subject. Organizing is another thing. It is the thing that you have to get to the point quick. So that is actually the main thing. And I did practice my speaking section at home. I was a little bit better when I practiced it at home. I think it was just because of the stress, and also because I didn't do all the 4 sections at the same time, so I was a little fresher when I did the speaking part. So what I would suggest is, unlike me, try to do the whole practice test at once. just take afternoon and just go and sit there and do it, because it gives you the feeling how it's going to be for when it's for real. So as far as the speaking part, I find it really difficult to actually give advice because I struggled so much on it.
Yeah, I've come across some students who have gotten above 26, and there's not many of them, and but there are some who have done it. And one tip that a student I talked to said is, make sure before you actually take the speaking test, make sure you already have organized templates. A template is an outline. You need to make sure you already have some outlines for the 6 speaking tasks, because once you begin speaking, you don't want to worry about how to organize the ideas. You just want to put the content and put it into the outline that you've already practiced. So I think this is an important tip, having a specific template. And remember that each speaking task does not use the same outline. Now this is a whole nother video I could do on just outlining the speaking task, but let me just give you 2 examples to illustrate the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, in the first speaking task, it might say, what was your favorite vacation as a child, and give reasons why. The outline is pretty simple. You simply state a topic. My favorite vacation was when I went to Japan. And then you have to give reasons why you like going to that. So you actually have your main topic and then 3 different points of the outline. That's it. You're done. That outline's pretty simple. So speaking tasks 1 and 2 follow the same outline. However, when you get to speaking task number 3, you have to read something, and then you have to listen to something, and then you have to speak. So then the outline changes. Because in the topic statement, you have to say something like this. The topic of the reading passage is, and the topic of the listening is. You need to state both of the topics in the topic statement of your speech, and then when you get the next part of your speech, you say, according to the reading passage, blah, 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 and finally, the listening passage, blah, blah, blah. Make sure the listening, when you get to the listening, make sure that you explain how it relates to the information in the reading. You need to show the connection there. So that template, the template for speaking tasks 3 and 4, is very different from the template for speaking tasks 1 and 2. My suggestion is make sure that you regularly practice outlining the different types of speaking tasks. I like your suggestion. Practice a speaking test. Go through all 6. You need to feel how fast it is. It's very fast. And you actually panic, you got a little bit nervous, you don't like that microphone being put in front of your mouth. Okay, you have 15 seconds to prepare a response, you got 45 seconds to speak, and then all of a sudden you have to start talking. You don't have very much time to prepare, so it is kind of scary. But if you practice a lot, you have some kind of a template, hopefully you can probably do pretty well with it. And again, I'm going to go back to the listening. You have to be a good note taker during the speaking, because your notes actually become your outline. So you take notes on the reading passage, you take notes on the listening passage, and as you speak, you're looking down at your notes to help you answer the question. So it becomes very important. Okay, here we go. Last but not least, we're getting to the writing section. You have been testing now for 3.5 hours. You're getting tired. You did a reading section, a listening section. You did the speaking section very short but very fast, and now you have a 50-minute section, the writing. You have 2 writing tasks. You have an independent writing task, which is a personal experience, blah, blah, blah. You're supposed to write about 350 words of topic that you have a personal experience about. And then you have an integrated writing task, in which case you read a passage, then you listen to a lecture, and then your writing task that maybe connects the 2 sources, and you get 20 minutes to answer the question. So basically you get 30 minutes, you get 20 minutes, and that gives you 50 minutes for the last part of the test. And your score was pretty strong. I'm not going to say it was extremely high, but you got 24 out of 30, so you passed. A lot of professional programs would allow 24. Obviously, you're near perfect in reading and listening. Your weakness is the speaking, but you still did pretty strong in the writing task. So my question kind of relates to what we've talked about all along. What suggestions during the writing test would you give other test takers? And is there anything that they can do beforehand to prepare for the writing section of the test?
Well, what I lacked in the speaking section, I try to make up in the writing section. My biggest problem is organizing. And that comes back in my entire life, I guess. But
that's funny.
But for the speaking section, because you really have to organize your answer, but in the writing section, you also have to organize, like, what are you going to write about? So when I was practicing for the test, I actually did worse in the writing section. So that was the part I was worried about. So what I did to prepare for that is, well, I got an American boyfriend, and I used his, he's also in university, I used his assignments for his English class to practice. So I think I did an assignment about, I don't know, summarizing advertisements, or like just, and he revised it for me. Okay, what do you have to look about? What do you have to look for, and how can you improve it? So I did that to practice. During the writing section, I had like main goal. I had one goal, because I knew I screwed up at the speaking section. I already knew that, because I was worried. I was like, wow, that went really bad. So you start with a bad feeling on the writing section.
Yeah, I did.
So I was like, okay, how am I going to make up for that? Okay, just keep it simple. Just what is the question? Okay, they want me to compare this reading section to the listening section. Okay, and write something about that. Okay, what's the main goal in the reading? What's the main? Just do it step by step, and just give your own opinion. Just keep it really basic, really simple. Don't use difficult language if you're not sure if you're using it in the right context. Just use simple, clear language. Make sure that your grammar is right. I mean, you don't have to. Just make it simple for yourself. That's my main advice. Just don't keep it simple.
Yeah, those are some good tips. Yeah, sometimes students, if you're going to experiment with new vocabulary or new grammar structures, the TOEFL is not the place to experiment. You should do that as you practice. You got a good tip. I like this tip where your boyfriend, he had writing assignments from his university classes, so you practice actually answering or doing those writing assignments, and then your boyfriend actually revised and edited your writing. That's great advice. If you guys could do that, if you could find somebody who can actually edit your own writing, I'm not saying you have to get a boyfriend or girlfriend, but yeah, but have contact with native speakers is a good idea, especially when it comes to editing and revising your writing. So if you have a tutor, it might be an ESL or EFL teacher, it might be a friend, but make sure the person understands writing and organizing in the new language. It's very important. So yeah, those are some good tips. Now I'm going to clarify a couple of things here. The independent writing task, use your opinion. Now on the integrated writing task, do not use your opinion. The TOEFL's not asking if you agree or disagree on the integrated writing task. They're asking you to express the relationship, to show how the information in the listening is related to the information in the reading. Here's a tip for you. Sometimes the listening passage, it might be giving an example of something you have read. It might give a further example of something, so it's adding by giving additional information. It's possible if the information in the listening actually disagrees with the information in the reading. For example, the reading passage might talk about the contributions of a certain professor and why this professor is so important to a certain field, but then the listening passage explains some potential problems the professor had with doing the research. So there's definitely a opposite or different meaning there. But anyway, I want to thank Maika for taking her valuable time to discuss her experience with taking the TOEFL IBT and for sharing, I think, some very useful information for other students out there who are getting ready to take the test. So thank you very much. Good luck.